Okay, what's up, guys? It's Godson. Welcome back to the channel. So we've got actually some of the people that have been pushing to leaderboards. Great to have you guys. Scrub a Dub, Shabeem, and Smartass. Smartass is really putting in work, and Shabeem, I always see you on the Discord putting in work out there. So we've got the private beta 2 finally. The private beta 1 was awesome, but what we're doing in today's episodes, we're just going to talk about the pros and cons of private beta 2, and we're going to give our ideas about it. And hopefully if the developers see this, we can move forward with how the private beta should go. So thank you guys for coming on. I just want to ask you guys your pros and cons about this. I want to leave the augments out for right now and just talk about the pros and cons. So for my pros and cons, I really like that the private beta 2 is more fun. The private beta 1, I feel, was more technical. What do you guys think? We'll go ahead and start with Shabin. What do you feel the pros and cons of it?
So in terms of pros and cons for the overall gameplay, how it starts, how it like early game, mid game, late game. So prior to the patch that dropped yesterday, and I only had the chance to play it today, I felt like they destroyed the mid game, but now it's not the case anymore with the cutting of the interest mechanic. So what I can say is early game is more fun. You do have to know your opportunities. So right now with the interest system, I believe you have it's an opportunistic mechanic. So you have a way that you can choose which waves you greed and which waves you don't greed. So you really need to think about that. So early game is definitely now present, not like PB1. So that's a pro. I had the opinion they destroyed the mid game, but now they brought it back because you just can't sit on 100, 200 gold and just clear out the waves. You have to actually use your resources in the best way you can. And late game, I still have not achieved it. I would say like late game is 35, 36. I have not achieved it on this patch, but I believe it's more interesting and more challenging. Prior in PB1, if you reach like wave 20, you're basically done. Like all the rest of the waves, you already have your whole team. You don't need anything else. You just play around with positioning.
Right.
So those are my thoughts on pros and cons, like simply put.
Okay, let's go ahead. Go with we'll go Scrub a Dub next in this smartass. If you're still there, we'll go with you last.
Of course.
So, thanks, Godson there. Obviously, I do agree a lot with what Shabim already said. One of the main pros that I see about PB2 is that they really provided a lot of depth into the game. It's more cerebral now. As Shabim mentioned, early game, it's about optimization, and a lot of us players have actually been spending a long time in the first 10 rounds just trying to perfect, the greed mechanic, the interest, just optimizing as much earnings and interest that we can get. And
Right.
then,
Yeah.
even in the middle of the game, it's about now really fixing. Do you now sacrifice your greed just to ensure that you get past this because you don't want to waste your one or two checkpoints on such an early round, and you want to push for that later rounds and use those three checkpoints at the end of the games, right? So that's definitely a great plus for PB2, and the same obviously with illuvials has provided a wide slew of choice illuvials you can use now, not like before where you're just going for the usual Titanor, Adorias. Here you're actually introduced with other illuvials that you can switch in and switch out. And I really enjoy that because, like I said, it became cerebral now. For the
Yeah.
cons, oh yeah, Godson, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to agree with you, and I feel that's like the staple of a crypto game, having that greed aspect. Where I've actually died more in the earlier waves than the later waves, just trying to get enough gold to do that. But yeah, I agree with you. Go ahead with your cons.
Yeah, so for the cons, again, this I might probably be catered more towards the casual gamers, where and you can see there is this complexity that is not yet clear for a player just jumping into this, right? Like the hyper system has been reworked, and then you're sort of like trying to guess how is this now benefiting with the dominant affinity or the dominant class now being into play. When you bond into something, it's not clear yet as to what you're supposed to be getting, and it's a trial and error. I do know that they are going to be addressing all these things with an upcoming patch, but for someone who would be, jumping in or be getting their access in the next few days, I heard about that from Rich that he'll be sending it out. It might be overwhelming without any kind of guidance, so that would
Yeah.
be a con for me.
Okay, and smartass, I actually haven't seen you too often, but now I'm seeing you in the private beta too, and you are getting pretty high in the leaderboards. Same with Shabim. But could you go ahead and give me your thoughts on the pros and cons, and how long have you been playing?
I've been playing since like July. I was the number one player on the leaderboard of PB1 when it ended, but there wasn't that much competition left because everyone kind of quit because it got a bit stale.
Yeah.
But as for PB2, what I like most is the amount of options you have available now. So, for example, back in the day in PB1, all you had was a unit, your ranger with air shield, and you had him from round 1 until round 30. Now you have the bonding mechanic and you have the weapons that actually do something. So now you're not playing with just your air shield, you're actually optimizing your strategy around the ranger for a large part, I would say. So it gives us access to a whole bunch of different stuff like a magma ranger or like a spore, or we can do different stuff, you know. So there's still some things that we don't really have access to. So we don't have like a mud, for example, or a shock that you can have the composite synergy online. So you don't have two units that you can put it on. But we have some more options than back in PB1, so that's a good change for sure.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, also just what all the other guys said. So we have a lot more things to figure out now. The game got a lot more difficult, especially with the interest mechanics and yeah, all the available options you have to you right now.
So my biggest issue with the private beta 2 is I don't know. I look at private beta 1 as more of a technical. It was more technical for me. Like placement was the biggest thing because I needed to get hyper on my tank. Now it doesn't seem like it's such a big issue with placement. I just know I need to put all my illuvials on the side, and if Scoriox can get hyper or if he can get it as vampiric, then I'm good. With the private beta 1, I noticed that rogue placement was really big because if your rogue didn't hit the right target, you could lose. With private beta 2, I feel like the rogue placement, it's not such a big deal because they're not going to really land where you want them to. Maybe that's just my opinion, but I feel like the rogues going where on the left or right side of the scions, it seems like an issue for me. But it's not a big deal now because of all of the augment. What do you guys feel about augments? Are they too strong? Are they weaker? Did they destroy the game? Do you like them? Give me your thoughts on the augments so far. Go ahead with Shabim.
All right, so first, if I could make a point about positioning, I do agree with you completely. Positioning now matters significantly less, and mostly because you have a hyper carry mechanic now. With you can put like 2 broken augments on an already very strong illuvial, and you can make him basically solo carry the game. Why does positioning matter less with augments and like broken combinations? Is because the moment you press play, now you can annihilate basically 2 or 3 units before they even do anything. So for example, you put a dual F with crit amplification and Omega can crit, you put a Scoriox next to him with 2 augments giving him attack speed and crit chance. The moment you play that button, whatever is in front of those 2 guys just disappears, and then you just wait on the Omega ability of the dual F and you just kill 2 targets in the backline. And you basically just started and like 4 guys already dead. So that's why positioning matter less. Now regarding augments in general, I think augments make the game more interesting. They do need to balance them. In the latest patch, they did address base stats of illuvials, and I'm not sure if that's the way to go because they made duelist attacks basically 50% less, but if you get crit amplification, it still can hit 1000 damage per auto attack. So it didn't really fix anything if you have the right augments. So again, the broken combinations was what is the problem. Regarding positioning as well, I would like to make another point. The AI or whoever is making those enemy waves is now putting illuvials closer together. So if, for example, in PB1, if you wanted to put your rogues on a particular side of an illuvial, you could do that without any problems. Now you can't. If you put an illuvial, you want to jump him into a specific place and they're a little bit too close together, your illuvial is going to slide off like butter from them and can just completely go the other way around.
Right.
So yeah, those are my thoughts about that.
Yeah, and even end up in front of a scion. Like my Ramfire could end up in the middle of the battle. That's an issue for me. But I understand why they did that because a lot of the rogues would pop out of the match or out of the arena and they'd be stuck. Maybe that's why. Not sure, but Scrub-a-Dub, let me ask you, what do you think about the augments? Or I could give you another question if you just want to move on. what do you think is the best illuvials like that we have with the new ones? You know, we have that Groko and the Flish. Do you like those ones? Are they strong, or what are your thoughts on the new ones?
Yeah, so Shabim already answered the augments, and I think I shared the very same sentiments. So I'll definitely jump in on the illuvials. And in my opinion, if we're talking about like the tier zeros, definitely enjoy seeing Flish and Groko in action, especially for the early games. And even at the end of the games, usually I dropped in like a Groko for the additional bulwark, and he's actually doing a pretty good job, especially with his Omega being able to stun and whatnot, right? But if we're talking about all the other illuvials that were included, I would have to say that the Scion Lynx is actually one of the best ones that I've seen, and they can be a huge carry even on the mid game if you place the significant augments on it, because that wave can just hammer down on the opposing board, and so I really enjoy that. Other than that, I think yeah, probably just Lynx is the one that I would really be rooting for this new set.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. Those links are pretty good, especially like the I don't know, is it the one with the wind and I put like a wind and a fire just between my scions, and they do really well. But let's go ahead and move on with Smartass. I'm gonna ask you, maybe if you want to jump on, what do you feel is the most broken augment or the best one? Or even like what do you feel about the new changes to Vermilier and Kuka and Ramfire? Do you like those? You can give me your sentiments and your thoughts on those.
Sure. Just some thoughts on the question you asked Shabim first. So I would like to make the distinction between PB1 and PB2, because when we are doing these deep runs, we don't get there on the first attempt usually, and we have to rerun quite a lot of times. And what I have found is that now with PB2 and the augments, yes, the positioning matters less, but I actually like it because the waves and the outcomes are more consistent when you copy your build from the screenshot, for example. So in PB1, you could be 1 or 2 hacks off, and the outcome of the round would be completely different. And in PB2, I have the feeling it's much less the case, so it's easier to repeat your deeper runs. So I actually quite like that, and it becomes more about the strategy and your like overall idea how you're approaching the wave, and not about perfectly placing a unit at the exact right hex. So that's about that. Regarding the augments, I think the augments, just like the units in and of itself, they are decent and okay, but it's when you combine the unit with the augment it really needs is when you get the monsters. So this is where the fun part is, where you create these like hyper carry units that can basically solo carry the round for you.
Mhm.
First thing that comes to mind is of course the Ramfire with the Saphiric what's it called, the augment that gives you like a cleanse, and you basically get to double cast your Ramfire ult. If you combine that one with the one that says that your Omega can crit, you put in some rogues, you can basically have like 88 to 95% crit rate on your Ramfire, double casting, sometimes within like 2 seconds. And it basically wipes out everything that gets caught in that ult. So, yeah, I think we have some pretty broken units in combination with the augments. So, what Shabim said also, of course, with the dual lift, with the Omega Beam and the crit gaining from it. Um, yeah, familiar. I don't know. I used to use him a lot in PB1. I really liked him as a assassin of a hyper carry on the enemy team, because you were pretty sure he was just gonna take one unit out no matter what. And now he became more of like a utility tank based unit, and you can actually make him very tanky when you use a lot of spore and air.
Mhm.
So yeah, it just changed its role. It's more fitting now since it's like an empath, so it should be more of a support unit and not like a hard assassin.
Awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and we've got maybe one or two questions left, and we'll go ahead and end this. But Shabim, I'll go ahead and start with you and ask you about what do you feel about the new alluvials? The new ground types, the links that's a ground type, and also what do you feel about the composite classes, and with the overall changes with the addition to adding more affinities in the game. So like now we can get to 9 ground, or is it 9 earth? That is awesome. So, do you like these changes? What is the most broken of the classes and affinities that you feel that are better than a private beta 1? Because I haven't really seen a full fire team yet, but I feel like Earth is the big deal.
So regarding new illuvials, they don't stand out to me that much. Like you have just basically you take Grokos, you take Bulwark Lynxes, they're just basically mid shields that can AoE stance, and that's how I compartmentalize them in my head. So just a mid shield with an AoE stun. Regarding Empath Lynxes, now Empath Lynxes are actually a lot more interesting than the regular ones. They like heal, they give you dodge, they give you grit, they give you resilience, resolve, they give you a lot of stuff. So they don't stand out to me that much. I'm just gonna say that. Now, regarding composites, with the bonding mechanic, you can make basically any single composite that you already have in your deck. For example, if you have Mystic and Staff, you're probably going to get double Mystic. If you have Granite and you have some kind of Earth, any Earth weapon, you already have like a Granite synergy. So Granite in terms of if you only have one Goliath, for example, you can already make it Granite. So composites make it fun. The bonding mechanic makes it a lot more challenging, and it actually requires you to learn what all the synergies and composites do. Like I'm gonna be honest, in private beta 1, even though I was reaching leaderboard rank 1s consistently, I had no idea what Rogue does. I had no idea what Templar is. I have no idea what Bloom is. I didn't have any of this knowledge because there was no need for it. You just basically position your stuff and you win, and that's it. Now you actually have to learn. So that's challenging. I don't know how they're going to curve that learning experience for new people, but yeah, that's challenging for me even now, and I'm still struggling. Regarding the most broken thing, now you might be surprised for my answer, but I think the most broken thing is the rogues. And why do I think that? Because now you can make your ranger a predator, so that's a rogue plus a rogue, so you can already go into that 6 rogue threshold, which gives you so much crit chances, so much crit amplification, and an execute. And if you combine that, for example, you make a rake. Yeah, rake is You make a rake, you give him vamp, you give him crit amplification, you give him 6 rogues synergy. You send the guy in, he just like 2 shots every single thing. He just goes around killing everything. So in my opinion, that's the most broken thing. Of course, you have like the Roundfire double casting with crit omega. You can make phantoms. You don't even need that omega can crit augment. You just make your ranger a phantom. He already does that. You just stack your Roundfire. He just kills everything. So yeah, there's a lot of broken things, but I think it mostly centers around rogues because they take so much damage. I don't know how they're going to balance it, but it needs to be addressed through augments. Just negating base stats doesn't do much. With the example of the Zulef, they made him twice as less. They made their auto attacks twice as less damage, but you still ramp up to 1.5 thousand damage per auto attack with crit amp. So that's it's crit. The broken thing is crit. I'm just gonna say it. It's crit. I don't know. It's just crit.
Nah, I have to agree with Shabim here. I mean, solidly, right? You guys were talking about how the changes to Vermilieri. I actually love using him and Ramfight if I don't have Ramfire, right? Because you actually have this opportunity to do AoE crits with these 2 rogues to the backline, and it just eliminates everything.
You're talking about Vermilier, right? He's got that
Yep,
Revenant,
Vermilier.
but I think, doesn't Vermilier like reduce their speed, their attack speed by 20% or something?
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
It doesn't matter on the attack because with these 2 rogues at the back with the crit, as Shabim has actually mentioned, and I actually use my ranger as a predator in one of the days. That crit is just incredible. It would just wipe out just the back.
Okay, so quick question. You're telling me if I have a predator ranger with Ramfire and Vermilier, that's broken, or is there something else I'm missing?
No, it's just purely rogues with crit can be broken.
Crit is like the crit is the savagery and the accuracy, right? Those 2.
Yeah. So that's
precision and savagery. Yeah.
Precision. Yeah.
Precision and savagery. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and how do you feel about the Blaze Knight? I feel he's more annoying now.
Well, I think Fern would be. I'd use Fern more than Blaze Knight, to be honest, because of the utility of Fern, cheap, and having that stun, right? On Blaze Knight, I would rather pick a different, DPS unit to fill that role with the amount that you're using. But I love him or it, but then it's not my first choice. And if ever, when you look at the deck, it's probably something that as a utility, as Shabim would have coined it a while ago.
Oh, okay. And Smartass, I'll give you the last question here, and you guys can chime in after Smartass to give your final thoughts. What do you think with the new patch notes? You know, we got the new patch notes, and they're changing some stuff. What do you think would be the perfect balance for the game going forward? What would you like to see if we could bring maybe even some private beta 1 stuff into 2? What would you do so that the developers can see and maybe hear from us?
Yeah, so the one of the biggest changes is actually the hyper mechanic. So now you don't gain the hyper from the composites. So for example, before you could have, for example, Titan or fighting an Exodon, and you would stack your hyper in like 4 seconds because you would have the 2 earth against the 2 water. Now it doesn't count anymore. So that mechanic is gone, and it's kind of a shame actually, if you ask me, because I liked it a lot to have like a hyper unit very fast, and it meant you had to position correctly even more than now. Right now, the hyper mechanic actually feels like underwhelming, I would say, because by the time you get the hyper, the round is usually already decided because the fights are much faster.
Yeah.
Things escalate way quicker than in PB1 because of the augments, and you can burst down units so much faster than before. So I actually would like to go back to the old hyper, but maybe I'm just being nostalgic.
Yeah, I agree with you. The old hyper system, I really like took my time for placement so that my units could leech and get their hyper, because that would, even with hyper, I felt like it was still tough. You know, all my units having hyper with their units not getting hyper was still an issue for me. But yeah, I agree with you. If you guys want to go ahead and give the last words here, Shabim and Scrub.
Yeah, I agree completely. I don't even know. Like the hyper mechanic means so much to me that I don't even know what it does for certain classes. Like Bulwark, I'm assuming he gets more tanky. Rogues, I'm assuming they get more damage. But specifically, I don't know because they just don't matter. You half the round is gone when you press the start button, and that's the crit problem. And I'm just gonna yeah, crit is broken, and it just breaks the game. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter. Placement doesn't matter. Affinities don't matter. Hyper doesn't matter. It just either you crit or you get critted, and that's how the game goes.
yeah. So they need to definitely nerf. Scrub Dub, you can get the last word.
Yes, honestly, Smartass and Shavim actually hit the nail on the head. It's really down to the augments being reworked because I feel that it's just too overpowered as it is now. It feels like, whatever augments that you can place on an ideal unit just breaks the game, especially mid game. Like I remember completely that I had Ramfire and the two, as you mentioned, the crit and the energy one. And honestly, I only had him and Titanor for probably 6 to 7 rounds during the mid rounds, right? That's from 14 to 20 something. And I wasn't dying because he was just killing everything. And then hyper system needs to be reworked again. I definitely agree with Smartass on the assessment that composites shouldn't matter because now it actually allows you to to fix your positioning, right? You are now conscious about where you're going to be placing your units because you're trying to optimize. And this falls in the same way with your greed. So it's really about that optimization loop that you're really thinking about that makes the game have more depth and more critical thinking. And I guess the other thing that I do want to raise, I think for the devs, which I'm pretty sure they are very much aware of, is on the bonding because that is a game changer, and it's very unique in terms of any other games. I have not seen this mechanic to have this much of a big effect in the game. So I hope that the it will be more clear and it'll be more intuitive for people to understand. Okay, I will use this bonding on this particular illuvial because I know I'm going to be getting specifically this class or this affinity rather than doing a um, rather than doing a trial and error on that.
Right. Yeah. So I feel that yeah, that the augments really, I feel they're designed specifically for some of these alluvials like Ramfire. If he goes below 60, he gets that extra boost in his his ultimate. So there's a lot that they could do. But overall, I think the game is pretty fun. I like the sound effects. I like the music. Everything is great. I feel there's just, we're working more towards a perfect balance for everyone. So I want to say thank you guys for coming on. And for you guys watching, you can check these guys out on Discord. They are playing on there, Scrub a Dub. He's also with the Infilluvial. The links will be in the description below. Thank you guys for coming on. Illuvium's great, and hopefully I can see you guys again on another interview. So thank you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.
I'd say.
Thank you, Godson.